Hey guys, TheSneakySnake here, brothers in arms, World of Warships, and today's video we're going to take a look at our next installment in our Tactics and Strategy series, and this one features the Hsienyang the Tier VIII Pan-Asian Destroyer, and we're going to be going over the Tiers 8 through 10 Pan-Asian DDs. In this replay, I'm divisioned up with my friends Sits and Super, and they're playing in the Atago and Kutuzov, respectively, the Tier 8 Premium, Japanese Heavy Cruiser, and Soviet Light Cruiser, and we're playing some domination here on the map Trap. So the Pan-Asian DDs in-game are a motley collection of other nations' designs, really, that, well, they're interesting in-game. Of course, the big and chief reason is due to the deep water torpedoes. However, once you finally get up to Tiers 8, 9, and 10, what you basically have are American clones. In this case, this is a Gleaves-class destroyer. It's very comparable to the USS Benson, which the Americans have on as the standard destroyer on the tech tree. And then, of course, at Tier 9, you have the Chungmu, which is basically just a Fletcher. And then at Tier 10, you have a Hsienyang, which is an Allen M. Sumner class, which is very similar to the gearing. So all of these destroyers, Tiers 8 through 10 on the Pan-Asian DD line, share very similar characteristics with their American counterparts. And if you like to play American destroyers, then you're going to do very good in these things. However, there are a few slight and a few key differences that you need to know. And I hope this replay not only shows that for the cases, I should say, of the Hsienyang, but also all of the Pan-Asian DDs, Tiers 8 through 10. So, of course, as I mentioned, the big thing are the deep water torpedoes. Now, the Benson and the Hsienyang have the exact same torpedo armament and performance. 9.2 kilometers of range, 55 knots for the top speed, and 16,633 maximum damage. However, the big thing between the Benson is that these torpedoes are only spotted from 700 meters or 0.7 kilometers away, whereas the Bensons are spotted from 1.1. Now, of course, the Hsienyang is not able to hit enemy destroyers with the torpedoes, and for that matter, none of the Pan-Asian DDs are. However, having 400 meters better detectability range on the torpedoes is extremely nice, and there's going to be a few instances during this replay where the Pan-Asian DD torps really do come in handy over some of the other designs that you have out there, especially with like Japanese torpedoes that have extremely high detectability ranges. Now, compared to the Benson, it's the same setup, at least on a Sea Hull Benson. You have 4 guns, the 127mm variety. You have a comparable amount of hit points. The top speed is virtually the same. The maneuverability is virtually the same. The AA defense is virtually the same. Of course, with the Pan-Asians, you have access to 1 extra smoke screen. However, you are not able to fit defensive fire. So the Benson is going to be a little bit better of an AA boat. Actually, a lot better of an AA boat for that matter, because it has access to defensive fire. But the Hsienyang, the Hsienyang is going to be a bit better of a torpedo boat. Now, of course, that's something that the Benson is not really known for, but having the better detectability on these torpedoes is just fantastic. It allows you to virtually guarantee hits on enemy ships, especially ones that don't maneuver very well, if you manage to drop your torpedoes in the right places. Now, right here with 1657 left, I do manage to get the solo base cap. And with the Pan-Asian DDs Tiers 8 through 10, that's exactly what you should be doing. They are some of the best cap contesting and destroyer fighting ships in the game, and as such, you really should be up close and personal. Now, one thing to note, and it works in the favor of the American DDs, is of course their torpedoes are able to hit you, while your torpedoes are unable to hit them. So you have to give a little bit more care when you're trying to get into a gunfight. At the very least, you should be thinking to yourself, okay, if I start this gunfight and he doesn't shoot at me for a couple seconds, I know that he is going to be dropping torpedoes on me, so I have to take that into consideration. And what happens is that when you have, a lot less hit points than an American DD, or a German DD for that matter with Hydro, you need to be very, very careful about engaging something, because you know that your torpedoes are not going to bail you out with a cheeky hit. They would really, take away his hit points and change the outcome of the engagement. Now, another thing about the Tier 8 through 10s is that you can actually get rid of the smoke screen to mount radar. Now, the radar isn't very good. It's only 7.5 kilometers in its detection range, and the time that it lasts for is, I think, 12 seconds on the Hsienyang, about 15 on the Chungmu, and about 20 on the Tier 10, the Hsienyang. So the bottom line is it's not very long. So it's used kind of like in a scavenger role. You want to get in there, find those low health destroyers that are on the cap, and then pop a little bit of radar to ensure that they get detected and that you're able to get the kill. But it's few and far between, and I only suggest using the radar on these things when you're able to have the support of friendlies. As a matter of fact, Putin just managed to put up a video in the Chungmu where he used the radar to great effect and was able to use it in concert with his friends that he was divisioned up with to take care of business. Now, really quickly here, with 15:03 left in the game, you can see I drop a full salvo of torpedoes on the Nuremberg, and I actually really screwed this up here. I didn't lead them nearly enough. However, you can see I get the triple Citadel with the 127s before the torpedo hits him in the stern, and I pick up the devastating strike. These 127mm are able to Citadel cruisers at point-blank range, all but the most heavily armored cruisers for that matter. So don't be afraid to load the AP at point-blank range. It's something that a lot of people, a lot of American DD captains don't realize, and of course, since these are the same guns on these Pan-Asian DDs, you can get the same results with these weapons. So, what do I think of the Pan-Asian DDs tiers 8 through 10? Well, the big thing is you trade a bit of team play for the ability to strike targets really hard with the torpedoes. That would probably be the best way to put it, in my opinion. That's probably, in one sentence, the best way to describe it, because having the defensive AA on your American DDs and having, you know, the really big smoke screens, I'll get to that in a second, is just so invaluable to your team that you can't really put a price tag on it. Now, with the Pan-Asian DDs, not only do you get an extra smoke, but it lasts for 30 seconds when you hit that T key. You can see right there as I'm popping my smoke screen, it is a very long duration to be able to set the smoke screen. So you can create very large smoke clouds. They just, of course, don't last nearly as long as the American DDs. You can see there right now, I got about 1 minute and 10 seconds in the current puff of smoke that I'm at, whereas American smoke screens are able to last upwards of 2 minutes about. So, you know, the smoke is nice on the Pan-Asian DDs. You can afford to not run superintendent on these things because you get an extra one and forego that to save those 3 points for something else. However, you know, it's always nice to have these smoke screens, and something else about the Pan-Asian DDs is there's only 6 seconds in between the time that your smoke screen, the last puff, fully runs out and that your next smoke screen is ready to go. So you can play these things virtually undetected in that regard. And, well, it gives you a different way of smoking up your friends, and it lets you be a little bit more, I guess, greedy with the usage of your smoke screens, because you know you have an extra 1 or 2 to blow on you particularly to be able to get away from enemy ships, you know, from spotting. Now, I do have a torpedo slam home into the Bayern. That guy had absolutely no time to react. Even if that was Benson torpedoes, he still would have died from that. But I bet you that the Bayern, excuse me, there's just no chance. 700 meters, there's absolutely no way. You already have to be turning and just get lucky that you manage to find a gap in the torpedo spread. There's virtually nothing that you can do to get away from that. Now, here's a perfect example of how to play these Pan-Asian DDs at the high tiers, considering that your torpedoes aren't able to hit enemy destroyers. You can see the Anshan is 7.7 kilometers away. He's just off my starboard bow, and you can see that he's smoked up inside of the B cap. Now, I know that the Anshan is only a tier 6 destroyer. However, this does apply for pretty much any of the DDs that you're going to come across. You need to be able to strike hard and strike fast from a direction, from an area, from, well, any place that you're going to get a massive jump on them. And that's what's going to happen. I do get detected by aircraft here, so that Anshan, if he's paying attention, knows that I am coming up behind him. But at this point, I feel really comfortable. You can see he is dropping torpedoes inside of the smoke screen, and then all of a sudden, at about 4 kilometers away, he pops out of his smoke screen. Now, since he dropped his torpedoes, obviously I don't have to worry about them coming my direction, and I'm going to pop one of my smoke screens since you can see that there are friendly fighter planes above. So what I would be able to do, assuming the King George V didn't absolutely wreck that guy for over 5,000 hit points, is that those fighter planes that are just off to my port side would have been able to spot that guy, and I would have been able to shoot at him with impunity, and he would have had to really come in close to my smoke screen before he would have been able to spot me shooting inside of it. So, like I said, you can use these smoke screens a bit more selfishly in that regard to be able to get in close to an enemy destroyer and then smoke up, and then assuming that he is you know, unable to detect you inside the smoke screen, it's an American destroyer, technically, at the end of the day. And those guns are going to absolutely chew him up and spit him out. So that's very nice stuff. Now, at this point in the replay, I realize I have an opportunity. This Mikhail Kutuzov pushed just a bit too far in front as I pick up the assisted base capture. My torpedoes are reloaded. And you can also see an enemy Colorado is moving towards that smoke screen as well, or at least he's moving so where he'll be behind it. So who knows, maybe he'll turn hard to right and try to get inside of that. So at this point, I'm going to try to put myself into a position to use the torpedoes here on the enemy Kutuzov. Now you can see I zoom in with the binoculars just enough to make sure that that green indicator is going through the smoke screen so that I have enough range on the torpedoes, and as I drop them, I'm now going to turn hard back to port. And you can also see that my reload on these torpedoes was just over 2 minutes, so it does take a long time, but boy, oh boy, these things are extremely powerful. Anyways, for the purposes of the game, it's 558 to 531. The enemy team has since pushed through the objective down at Alpha. We do have Bravo and Charlie, but you can see that our team really isn't stacked up very nicely. There's a Pensacola who's going to die. There's no way, even with the better concealment on that thing nowadays, that he's going to be able to live in that position. My buddy Sits in the Otago is going to try to move here through the B-cap, but he does have the detectability to be able to do so. The enemy carrier planes are away for the moment, for the time being, so we should be okay. Really quickly here, you're going to see these torpedoes. And I know the Kutuzov does have access to hydroacoustic search. It can go that in lieu of the defensive fire, but right about now, he'd be spotting those torps. And I'm sure that you guessed it. 1, 2, and 3. I pick up the Dev Strike, kill a virtually full health Kutuzov, and secure my 3rd kill of the game. Again, there's nothing he would have been able to do there. There's absolutely nothing. He knew that I was in the area. I was definitely last spotted around the B objective, but there's just not enough time to react for that. There's just nothing that he can do about that. Would a Benson have gotten that kill in the same vein? Most likely. 400 meters isn't that big of a difference, but in all honesty, those deep water torps, I bet that guy was like, whoa, where did these things come from right before he kicked the bucket? He only had a couple seconds to react, and there's nothing you can do about that. So that was about as perfect of a usage of the torpedoes as I can find, just being able to absolutely trash on somebody. And I'd say that these things will probably give you a few more dev strikes than other nations' torpedoes will, simply because of the excellent concealment on these things. However, this game is long from over, and we got a lot of work to do here. So for the latter half of this replay, the power of American destroyer guns, concealment, maneuverability, what you have on this thing, is going to be the deciding factor in this game. I'm going to try to use one of my next smoke screens to get this King George V concealed up right here, at least once his debuff runs out and he will be inside of the smoke screen. You can see my buddy Sits is running away to the north. At this time in chat, I was telling him, hey man, just keep running up to the north, keep kiting away, and keep railing those enemy ships that are trying to come up against us with the high explosive shot. You can see I'm now putting myself in a position where I'm able to shoot over the island, completely protected from any potential Amagi or New Orleans salvos that would be coming in on my position. However, that New Orleans is going to be a bit of a problem, because I know that he's going to try to push into B and use his radar to be able to clear the cap out. So at this point, I want to stay in B as long as possible and do a fighting withdrawal to the northeast as slow as possible. And this doesn't really apply to Pan-Asian DDs as much as it just does to all ships in the game. When you're trying to do a fighting withdrawal, you need to have your plan, you know, figured out in advance, as far in advance as possible. So at this point, I'm already thinking to myself, okay, how am I going to be going about maneuvering myself around in the cap? And then when I absolutely have to get out of the B cap, where exactly am I going to go? And those are the questions that you need to ask yourself. I know that I have enough time to circle around and come back in. That New Orleans is still well outside of radar range. You can see my buddy Sits in the Otago has actually been lighting quite a few fires on the Amagi and has helped push those enemy ships away from the B cap for the time being. So at this point, there is a bit of breathing space, and we have bought ourselves a little bit extra time. Now, this enemy Kagero makes an absolutely ridiculous play and decides to turn right back in when there's a Hsienyang only 5.5 kilometers away from him. At this point, he is well within my detection range, and there is no way he is going to be able to get away, but he inexplicably tries to move into the B cap just to try to get on to be able to contest it. But even if he were to use his smoke screen right now, I have the rate of fire to be able to trash this guy, and there's just no way he's going to be able to smoke up in time and get out of dodge. The KGV hits him with a couple shells to chunk him down a bit. I put him on 147 hit points, and now he is going to kick the bucket. So now with the enemy destroyer dead, and myself being the only DD left in the game, our team has a massive concealment advantage, because I am going to be able, with my, I believe, 5.8 kilometer concealment, to control the rest of the engagements, assuming that our friendly carrier is able to deal with these enemy planes. Now, I have shot down a few planes. I've shot down 3 for that that matter, but it's not really going to matter all that much. You can also see that the enemy fighter that's hovering over the middle of B is kind of forcing me to finally get off of the B cap, but I stalled on this for about 2.5 minutes ever since the enemy team decided to finally make their push in there and really get on the objective. Now, these torpedoes are dropped on the King George V. Now, this thing that you're going to see me do here to this enemy New Orleans is baiting 101. You can see that I do get detected on the radar. I'm pretty sure he thought that I was going to stop and slow down inside the smoke screen to stay on B cap. However, I realized that this situation it would not be beneficial for me, and now I'm going to get outside of the New Orleans's radar detection range. You can see here I'm trying to get away, and because I'm still detected, he turns broadside to get all of his guns to bear, and I'm actually driving in more or less a straight line. I'm trying to get him to focus completely on me, and you can see that he's still not reacting to the torpedoes. Right about now, he would see them, but there's just nothing he can do, and due to the excellent damage that these torpedoes are able to do, I secure my 5th kill of the game. I also managed to hit the King George V with a torpedo as well. I pick up Confederate as well. A whole bunch of medals, a whole bunch of damage dealt. You can see that the King George V immediately had to use his damage control. The enemy team is about halfway done capping the B objective. However, I told my buddy Sits at this point, shoot at all of the different ships that are in B and keep resetting the cap. We're buying as much time as we can possible. And now, since that smoke screen is between myself and the King George V, when I start to open up fire on this guy, I am not going to immediately get detected. I'm far enough away from that spot plane that it's not going to spot me, and because he is still lit up, I'm going to continue to get some base resets on this guy and all that good stuff. I also managed to light a fire on him as well. Very, very nice. My buddy Sits decides to drop his torpedoes, and now he's going to continue his turn to port and try to make the turn here. So at this point, as I do finally get detected, I set a second fire on the KGV. He already used his damage control, so he is going to be burning in 2 places for the foreseeable future. And very unfortunately, my buddy Sits actually runs aground. He wasn't able to make that turn, and unfortunately for him, my smoke was just about ready to go, but I didn't realize he was going to run into the island. However, I'm trying to play birdie here and say, hey, enemy ship, shoot at me, shoot at me. I still got about 9,000 hit points to work with, and then at this point, I told my buddy Sits, hey man, you need to shoot at the Colorado to continue to reset the base. We're still buying as much time as possible. The King George V is down to about 13,000 hit points. I pick up the high caliber as well. You can also see that I pop my next smoke screen here, trying to help out my buddy Sits. I'm going to go right up next to him. Hopefully he doesn't take too much damage right here. The KGV and the Colorado both shoot at him. The Colorado appears to land a Citadel into his side. Sits actually has to run into me, and he's pushing me back at this point, but, you know, he had to get inside of the smoke screen ASAP, so I don't really care. I'm now turning my rudder hard to port so that I can just slowly slide off the front of his bow, and there we go. You can see the KGV is still burning. My damage counter is up to about 159,000 points of damage, and this next salvo should take care of business. And there we go. I pick up my 6th kill of the game. That smoke screen is going to last for another minute and keep Sits here A-OK. And now I'm going to switch my focus here to the enemy Otago, getting the guns going. The rate of fire is very nice. And I'm also angled to the torpedoes that he dropped from his port side as well. So actually, Sits running into me was about the best thing that could happen, because it angled me preemptively to these torpedoes, for the fact of the matter that I didn't have to turn around to 180 inside of my own smoke screen. I decided to launch my torpedoes down at the Otago, and now I switch to the armor-piercing shot. You can still see the Amagi and the Colorado have taken their sweet, sweet time trying to move through the B-cap, so at this point I'm putting the island just to my right, very much so to my right, so that whenever my smoke screen finally runs out, all I gotta do is move forward just a little bit, and I'll be able to shield myself from incoming fire. My buddy Sits is also angled well to all of those enemy ships as he is kiting away. He does have the AP loaded. He does take a pretty good hit from the Otago, but I continue to rail the AP into this guy. I only got 3 seconds left on my smoke screen, so as it's about to run out, there we go. I do get detected. However, I am immediately going to start moving forward. My buddy Sits gets a very nice hit into him and puts him down to about 2,000 hit points. He is on fire, but I'm going to keep shooting at him regardless. His turrets are not pointed towards me, and I pick up my 7th kill of the game as I go undetected, and you can see the island coming in clutch and deflecting all of the shots that were coming my way. We have held onto the B area as long as possible. Sits is down to only a few thousand hit points, but he does go undetected, and I told him right now, hey man, just go undetected, just keep running away. We have got the game in the bag, and we are going to win on the points. So we took a 3 versus 6, I believe, down to a 3 versus 3. The smoke screen, the good maneuverability, maneuverability, the excellent gun performance, the torpedoes that hit very hard and are very stealthy, all of the great parts of the Pan-Asian DDs, and the American DDs for that matter, coming in handy here. And with 999 points left, we realized we were going to secure this victory. A monster game here in the Hsienyang, and a very well hard-fought victory on trap. Alrighty guys, taking a look now at the post-battle results. 813,000 credits received, 24,700 total EXP. This was absolutely a first win of the day. I picked up 2 Dev Strikes, Confederate, Kraken, and High Caliber, dealing 179,000 points of damage off of 271 shell hits and 7 torpedoes. I shot down 3 planes, sank 7 enemy ships, had 3 citadels and 5 fires to boot, 6 base defense ribbons, 1 solo cap, and 1 assisted base capture. Taking a look at the team score, oh boy, 3,246 base EXP, an absolutely monster carry. My buddy Sitz having a great game himself, 1,945 base EXP and 12 planes shot down. He also did over 100,000 points of damage, some very, very nice supporting fire back into the BCAP, and then our buddy Super finishing in a very respectable 5th place with 1 kill, 7 planes and 1,144 base EXP. Taking a look at the detailed report, and this is what I love to see. 74,000 damage dealt with the main battery, 78,000 damage dealt with the torpedoes, and another 26,000 dealt with the fires and the floodings. 1.6 million potential damage, but the maneuverability and the stealth coming in handy, just dodging shells all over the place. I also accounted for 79 of the 180 capture points. That's a very healthy number for an American and Pan-Asian high-tier DD, and then a further 73 out of the 120 base defense points as well. So again, as I mentioned at the end of the video, if this is not a perfect example of how to get as much out of these high-tier Pan-Asian DDs as possible, then I really don't know. The only thing I didn't show was, of course, radar, but Putin, as I mentioned, has had a couple of videos recently highlighting the radar on the Pan-Asian DDs, and they can prove pretty useful in that scenario. But anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope it sheds some light on just how to make them work. The bottom line is, they're American DDs. The only major difference is that you can't torp enemy DDs with them, but since you've been playing Pan-Asian DDs up to this point, that should be pretty crystal clear. So you have to be a little bit more careful with your positioning in the caps, but other than that, it's still an American destroyer at heart, and it will absolutely wreck stuff. So with that being said, this is the Sneaky Snake here for Brothers in Arms World of Warships signing off. Please consider giving the video a like, commenting on it, or possibly subscribing to the channel. All of it is very much appreciated. And with that being said, guys and gals, have a great day.